Welcome back to Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard, everyone. I am the New York Daily News' NFL columnist and Giants beat writer. A crazy week doesn't even describe what we have seen in the NFL coming out of Week 9, leading into Week 10. Jeff Saturday, of all people, is the Indianapolis Colts interim head coach. Frankly, I thought Adam Schefter's Twitter account had been hacked when I saw him first report that news. You better believe I'm betting against it. And if you're betting, go to Bet Online. Basketball is back, and Bet Online remains your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season. You'll always find the latest odds, team matchup info, player news, and game trends at Bet Online. And as your continued source for sports wagering information, Bet Online features live betting, free contests, and giveaways all season long. Always the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sport and events, whether it's NFL, NBA, NHL, MMA, tennis, boxing, or even golf. Head to betonline.ag to join and receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, all caps, to receive your rewards. Bet Online, where the game starts. And where our game starts this week is with one of the most absurd developments we've seen in recent memory in the National Football League. Not the firing of Frank Reich, which I told you a couple weeks ago right here on this podcast when Matt Ryan got benched, listening to Chris Ballard, Frank Reich, and Jim Irsay, the owner, that had all the signs and signals of the head coach and GM are next. Of course, shame on them for firing young African-American offensive coordinator Marcus Brady before ultimately firing Frank Reich. But the announcement that Jeff Saturday is taking over as the interim head coach, what a laughing stock the Colts are right now for doing this. Nothing against Jeff Saturday personally. Always heard good things. Seems like a good guy. Not wishing him any harm or ill will as he takes over the Indianapolis Colts here. But let's be honest. First of all, this is a tank by Jim Irsay. This is a tank by the Colts organization. When you say a team is tanking, you're not saying the players and the coaches are trying to lose. Tanking is an organizational philosophy and approach. I saw Chris Ballard say, we are not throwing in the towel on the season. And when he says that, you have to take him at his word. But benching Matt Ryan for Sam Ehlinger, putting the product they did on the field the last couple weeks, and then naming a guy in Jeff Saturday as head coach who has no experience at the NFL or college level tells you all you need to know about what the Colts' long-term aim, and when I say the Colts, I mean Jim Irsay's long-term aim. He obviously knows that his team has only won in the last couple decades because it has found its way to a high draft pick to take a great quarterback. Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck, he knows that's the only way to be relevant again. Luck's retirement obviously set them back in incalculable ways, but that is, of course, in the NFL, the path to success. And not to mention their division rival, the Houston Texans at the moment, sit at the number one pick at the moment with a 1-6-1 record. And I'm thrilled in our next segment, stick around, we're going to have DJ Bien-Amie, the ESPN NFL Nation reporter covering the Houston Texans and my former colleague at the New York Daily News. He's going to help me break down a lot of the crazy and wild statements that Jim Irsay and Chris Ballard made during their press conference announcing Jeff Saturday as the interim head coach. And DJ is going to help us dig in to what the Houston Texans are, tell us a little bit about some of their most promising players, and preview the Giants-Texans Sunday game. And even Jets fans, DJ obviously used to cover the Jets. He is now no longer with us as the Jets have surged forward under Robert Saleh. And so I don't disappoint. He doesn't disappoint. We will get his take and information from DJ on where the Jets are and how he feels about watching it from afar geographically, even though he is, of course, still plugged in. But the one thing I wanted to say about the Jim Irsay and Jeff Saturday situation in my opening segment here before DJ and I break it down in our second block is about the Rooney Rule and about how, listen, the NFL said the Rooney Rule exists to, of course, provide interviewing opportunities and coaching opportunities and general manager opportunities for Black, African-American, minority candidates. And the NFL clarified that in this case, it does not apply to an interim hiring. So Jim Irsay did not have to interview a minimum amount of minority or black candidates as well as others before hiring Jeff Saturday as his interim. He could hire whoever he wanted. And of course, honestly, you have to look at this and you see Jeff Saturday getting hired and you're saying, this almost looks like he wanted Peyton Manning and Peyton said no, or he just knew Peyton wasn't going to coach. So the next guy up is Jeff Saturday. But kudos to the Fritz Pollard Alliance, which already announced, I think I saw Josina Anderson, our friend of the podcast, report that the Fritz Pollard Alliance said, well, if they're not going to follow it here, it sounds like it needs to be addressed and added to the rule this spring. So look for that. But I bring up the Rooney rule because even though Jim Irsay is following the NFL rule as it exists and he can hire whoever he wants as the interim, I thought it was telling that Jim Irsay said the quiet part out loud about how teams circumvent or don't follow the Rooney rule to the true tune of its intent. Here is Jim Irsay's quote. Yes, this is an interim head coaching job. It lines up with the Rooney rule. That's true. At the end of the season, there will be a full process of reviewing permanent head coach, which we will have an interview process for and go from there. So that all sounds good, right? Then Jim Irsay's next sentence is this. This is for 8 games, hopefully more. So let's just be clear about what he just said out loud at a press conference on camera. Jim Irsay said, yes, we're going to follow the Rooney rule and make sure we interview the minimum amount of minority and black African-American candidates after the season for our full-time job. But I hope the candidate that I just hired as the interim and didn't need to follow the Rooney rule to hire lasts more than 8 games. This is a perfect snapshot and example of how a lot of NFL owners approach the Rooney rule. He already has his guy. He's saying, I'll follow the process that you told me I need to follow, but I still hope this is my guy. If you look around the league, even searches that have been or look extensive, there are other organizations that have, let's say, hired many more than the minimum amount of minority candidates. But what a coincidence. Who do they end up hiring for their general manager position or head coach position or both? The first guy they interviewed. What do you know? What a crazy coincidence. It's just a shame that this is the reality we live in. Obviously, the NFL is not the only place where this occurs. Far from it. I just thought it was really interesting. And I wanted to call its attention to all the fans out there and everybody who listens to this talking point constantly, and everyone has an opinion on, oh, well, owners should be allowed to hire who they want. And then there's people on the other side advocating for the underrepresented. And I just think, forget how you feel about it, from a standpoint of ownership or how a team or a business should be run or bureaucracy. Just listen to Jim Irsay talk out both sides of his mouth when he says, we'll go through the process, but I hope Jeff Saturday is our coach for more than 8 games. Really disappointing, but not surprising. Wanted to add this on the Colts situation as well. As far as I understand it, talking to some people in the league, well, here's one interesting theory. On October 30th, so that's the day of Sam Ehlinger's first start, so a few days after Matt Ryan was benched, Tariq Glenn, the former offensive tackle for the Colts, was inducted into the Ring of Honor by Indianapolis. So that weekend, obviously, anytime that happens, you have dinner, cocktail party, gatherings, everybody's in town, former teammates. There is an idea that, so Jeff Saturday has been a paid consultant for the Colts. So he's already been in Jim Irsay's ear. And then there was this gathering the weekend of Halloween, essentially, around Tariq Glenn's event. And, guys like Jeff Saturday and Jim Irsay and, all the brass is there. They're all, talking about the state of the team and obviously coming off the decision to bench Matt Ryan, which there's no going back from. And I think there's a lot of people in the league looking at that and looking at how 8 days later, Frank Reich gets fired and Jeff Saturday gets installed as interim head coach. That's a pretty interesting coincidence. The benching of Matt Ryan, Tariq Glenn, everybody in town, people kind of pressing the flesh, talking in dark corners about the state of the franchise and what needs to happen. And then 8 days later, this switch. I think, if you're informed or if you follow all of these processes every year, you know that when they sit up there at the podium and Saturday says, wow, I got a call last night from Jim Irsay. I couldn't believe it. And Jim Irsay says, yeah, not until last night did I think I was going to offer this job to Jeff Saturday. And those are lies. Like, they're lies. I mean, these types of things don't happen overnight. These groundwork gets laid for this. So, as I said, I really saw coming down the pike that Frank Reich and Chris Ballard, A, would get fired, and B, would deserve to get fired eventually for how this has progressed. But don't sit up there and tell me that this all came together out of nowhere and nobody knew it was coming and you didn't have any conversations about it, because, I wasn't born yesterday. So, embarrassing, obviously, from a Rooney Rule and minority coaching standpoint, of course, that Reggie Wayne, a great former player, an all-time former player, is on the staff already, and Jeff Saturday gets hired over him. That's another embarrassing moment here. And finally, Chris Ballard, the GM, and DJ and I will get into it in our next segment, but really ugly look and defensive look, blaming the local media for pushing him to draft receivers, and therefore the offensive line is struggling. But I'll tell you what that kind of comment comes from. I've covered the league long enough. Jim Irsay, and he was asked a pointed question in his press conference about, you keep saying this guy's safe and then he gets fired. You say this guy's safe, he gets benched. Why should we believe you? That is a great question, and I think the question answers itself. When Jim Irsay sat up there at the dais and says that Ballard's definitely back next year and he's safe, you can't believe him. And when I watch Chris Ballard up there at this press conference during Monday Night Football, by the way, I'm watching this press conference. He looked defensive. He looked like a guy whose job was not safe, not a guy whose job is safe. And my early conversations around the league have pointed to the fact that Ballard will eventually be out too. I haven't reported that, definitively. I'm not going out on Twitter after we record this and tweeting and reporting yet that Chris Ballard is definitely getting fired. But I have talked to people informed, plugged in to these coaching and GM circles and hiring cycles and firing cycles, who believe that is going to happen. We will see if Jim Irsay is a man of his word at this press conference, saying that Ballard will be here next year, or whether he's going to tear it all up completely. My hunch is that this Jeff Saturday experiment is going to go very, very badly. And let's just be honest, it's really impossible to blame Frank Reich and not blame Chris Ballard, given how the team has moved to this point here, both from an execution standpoint, but also a roster construction standpoint. Moving over to a rookie coach who I've been impressed by, Matt Eberflus, the Chicago Bears head coach, and Luke Getsy, the offensive coordinator. They're only 3-6, but that was to be expected in a rebuilding year. I just see this team playing really hard. The defense obviously is struggling now. They've traded two of their best players in Robert Quinn and Roquan Smith off the roster, and so they'll continue to struggle there. But I just look at how is the team responding to the coach. I cover a team here in New York where the players, for the most part, have responded in a great way to Brian Daboll and fought hard for him and Wink Martindale. And I see that in Chicago. I think they play hard. They play to the final whistle. And the coaches, it tells me that they are intelligent, that they looked at Justin Fields early on and they said, okay, this offense isn't maximizing his skill set. They changed it up. Hopefully you read my story in the Daily News about the 7 teams running these run-heavy, quarterback run-centric offenses that are essentially taking the league by storm. At the recording of my last podcast, 5 of the 7 were in the playoff race, or were in the playoffs as of that time. I believe the Falcons have fallen out for now after the loss to the Chargers. But look at Justin Fields now. Concentrated more on the quarterback running, encouraging him to take off when he sees it. 178 rushing yards against the Miami Dolphins, the most by a quarterback in a regular season game since at least 1940. The last quarterback to do anything close to that, and the record that he broke, at least since 1940, was Michael Vick, running for 173 yards in 2002. Is Justin Fields the long-term answer? Who knows? But first of all, he's a gamer. I think Matt Eberflus is coaching up a team full of gamers. And anytime you get mentioned in the same name, in the same vein as Michael Vick, when it comes to quarterback rushing and production, tip of the cap to Justin Fields, Matt Eberflus, and the Bears for keeping it going and pushing forward there. Interested, by the way, to see how Chase Claypool continues to get acclimated and involved and assimilated into that offense. On the coaching front, on the job security front, heard some things about, well, first of all, I think Cliff Kingsbury and Nathaniel Hackett in Arizona and Denver have to be, two of the next guys on watch. I mean, George Payton in Denver said that Hackett's okay. If they continue to look competitive, then obviously first-year head coach, you don't blow anything up there, but that could continue to sputter, and I don't think it's any stretch of the imagination to imagine that could turn into more of a disaster. We'll see. It's really up to Russell Wilson at this point. They paid him. They've enabled him. He's got to put them on their back. Cliff Kingsbury in Arizona, it just looks broken. Heard something this week about the fact that Kingsbury and Kyler Murray really don't communicate as well as you would think, that they're not as in sync as you would imagine. They came there essentially as a package deal or tandem, so to speak, as a hire and a first and a number one overall pick. And you can just see on the sideline in the games, whether it was Murray yelling at Kingsbury a few weeks ago, it was Murray and DeAndre Hopkins seemingly constantly kind of scuffling and trying to figure out why they're not on the same page. Kingsbury trying to settle everybody down as Murray looks frustrated on the sidelines and pouty, basically. That just doesn't look like an NFL team that if I'm another team, I'm not afraid to play the Cardinals. Kudos to Budda Baker. I saw his post-game explosion of emotion, basically urging the team to fight and get them back in this because it's killing him how badly they are playing, how often they are losing, how they're losing at home. That loss to the Seahawks definitely stung Budda Baker, but this is a bad team, and it's a team without an identity. It's a team without a leader at quarterback, and it's a team without any kind of promising structure from the sideline that I can see. Obviously, Washington is one to continue watching through the end of the year into next season. The Raiders are a team that I look at. Listen, my Super Bowl picks this year are not looking good. Green Bay Packers against the Las Vegas Raiders. I think I'm going to have to take a mulligan on 2022. But I haven't heard anything about Josh McDaniels being in trouble, but there is definitely some thought in the league about, is a change going to be made somewhere there, just because I think it's 3 losses when they were leading games by 17 points or more has already tied an NFL record for an entire season. Something needs to give there. They cut Jonathan Abram, former high draft pick of Mike Mayock's. Something has to give there. I don't know what changes are going to happen in Vegas or if changes are going to happen, but I know there's a lot of eyes on how is Mark Davis going to handle this disappointment, because it's worse than bad right now. And finally, coming over to New York, over to the player side, just wanted to update you on a strange story for the Giants, where one of their top players on defense, Xavier McKinney, the free safety, got in, as he explained it, a Can-Am accident. So it's like an ATV off-road vehicle. There are different versions of them. There are some that are just 1-seaters. There are others that are bigger, look like 4-seaters. It sounded like McKinney said he was in a bigger one. As he told us at his locker, and you can go see some of the interviews and all the interviews on my Instagram, YouTube Shorts, TikTok, it's everywhere. My story on it on New York Daily News website. McKinney described it as they were in this vehicle. He claims he was sightseeing and not goofing off or doing anything reckless. and he says that the vehicle tipped over. He says it didn't flip, it tipped. And as best as I can understand how he described it, his left hand got jammed and the vehicle fell on his hand onto something and jammed it. He broke at least a couple fingers, though he and Brian Dable described it as a hand injury. And I was standing right there, and you can see my pictures on social media. He has his left arm in a sling, and his right hand is in a hard plastic cast that was covering everything but his thumb. So he had surgery when he got back from Mexico, from Cabo, where it happened. And he could not say whether he's going to play again this season. He's on the NFI list. He's going to miss at least 4 games. Tellingly, Xavier would not say whether he was driving the vehicle or not. He would not answer the question. And he got defensive and a bit hostile when he was asked that a couple of times when he wasn't answering it. Obviously, your number one concern is, will he be able to play again? Is he going to be okay for his life? He said, thank God, it's nothing that's not going to heal. He's going to be all right. So that's good to hear. Immediately, the Giants are really going to have to figure out, none of the players they have as potential replacements for him are as good as he is, especially at safety. Dane Belton, the rookie, good kid, but has struggled and I think needs time to develop. They have Jason Pinnock, a veteran who's played mostly special teams when he's been healthy. Maybe Nick McLeod, the corner who has earned a lot more trust, moves back there and helps them out, though he is more of a natural corner. So we'll see there. The most interesting domino to fall off of this is that Julian Love takes on the green dot and the play calling for the Giants on defense. And as I reported, the Giants and Julian Love's representatives discussed recently a contract extension. He is an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. Joe Schoen set a deadline for the Monday after the bye week to get any in-season contract extensions done. As far as I understand that is an arbitrary deadline of his. So this could still get done soon, though it doesn't have to now. If you're on Julian's side of things and Julian's side of the table, you have now assumed more value by becoming the defensive play caller. And so the price of the brick's going up, as they say, for the Notre Dame product. That'll be interesting to see if the Giants try and get something done and ironed out soon just to get it over with, or if now they can't get a contract done because the numbers maybe are shifting. Julian did admit and confirm my report in the locker room this week. He said that I'm going to leave it to those guys. I would love to be a Giant essentially forever, he said. And he even alluded to his bigger role that he's going to focus on now. So that'll be an interesting thing to follow on the contract front. I anticipate it, it'll get done. They want him here. Wink wants him here. Julian wants to be here. Just a question of when and what the money looks like. But a special player and a leader for the team. So that'll be something to watch in New York. Speaking of New York, we missed DJ Bien-Amie here in the Big Apple, but we got him back to talk Jets, to talk Texans, and to talk jokes with Jim Irsay next on Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard. All right, welcome back to Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard. Special guest this week, my former Daily News colleague, DJ Bien-Amie, went big time on us. He's now ESPN's NFL Nation reporter covering the Houston Texans. And DJ, I'm looking behind you. Is this the kind of space you get if you move out of New York, New Jersey area?
Yes. This is like 1,400 square footage. I got like 2 rooms and I got like a work den room. It's pretty spacious in here. And I'm paying well under $2,000 a month. Well under it.
That is insane. Moving on up, DJ, man, no surprise from you. Before we get to football, though, I want to tell the listeners a little bit about some of your non-reporter skills, because I'm sure they saw it on social media because they're following you already. But is it, correct me if I'm wrong, did you win the gold medal in the NFL Media Combine that the Houston Texans hosted earlier this season?
Technically, yes, I did. They gave me a belt. My belt's in my workroom. They gave me a lot of other stuff. I even have a trophy from winning that. But they wouldn't let me take the trophy home. So did I really win the trophy? I didn't really win the trophy. The trophy's just there. They won the trophy. So they're hogging it. But yeah, I did. The competition was fierce. I grinded it out to get that victory. A lot of heavy, tough competitors. But here I am standing tall, victorious.
For those of you who don't know, DJ, a speedster, former track standout at Louisville. I think I said that correctly. And DJ, I got to say, I was so glad to see that you won. But I think the biggest news was that you wore your Louisville tracksuit to the competition. Do you think that instilled some fear into your competitors? Because honestly, if I see you walk out onto the turf wearing that, I'm already thinking my day's over.
Hey, I don't think I pulled it out until like closer to the actual race. So by that point, we were doing other stuff like how far you could throw a football, catching punts, kicking field goals, throwing a football into like, that Dr. Pepsi like thing that people do like halftimes during like SEC championship games. So we had already did all that. I switched until when we started throwing football. I came in second in that. Some got through like 56 yards. I threw like 52.
Very nice.
If I had better mechanics, maybe I could have got 60. But, first I've been football years, you know what I'm saying? So
yeah, it's all the guys who run like 4.5 at the combine tell you off to the side, like, I can run 4.3. Like, don't worry about it. That's what you're doing with me right now. The what's it called? So wait, one more question about this. Are you telling me the Texans now have a trophy with your name inscribed for this year that is displayed somewhere in their facility? Is that what you're telling me right now?
Yeah, it's in the media workroom. It's a media combine champ, and then it says my name. That's there, but I couldn't take it home. So, and I think the belt back next year to like my status. Hopefully my left leg can heal up, because if my left leg heals up, I could possibly drop like a 4.5. Like,
wow, what happened?
Oh, when I finished my collegiate career running track, I had to get surgery on my left leg for like stress fractures. So I had my left leg. It was good. Like I healed fine first couple of years, but then like last year and then early this year, like it hurts for whatever reason whenever I try to run or whatever, like significantly. So
wow. So the rest of the Texans media contingent doesn't even know what's going to hit him after the full-fledged off-season rehab.
I could fully heal. Yeah, I could run some crazy stuff.
Oh, man, it's over. As you all can see, DJ, a man of many talents, no shortage of interesting conversations. And obviously, we got to know each other covering the NFL, covering football. And we're going to talk a lot of Texans here, DJ. Obviously, that's your wheelhouse right now. You're embedded there. But we have to start in your division right now with the Indianapolis Colts and Jim Irsay and this sideshow going on with the Jeff Saturday hiring after the Frank Reich firing. Right. And instead of asking you like a standard question about this, I want to start out with a little fun game, and it's called Jim Has to Be Joking. I'm going to give you a Jim Irsay quote from the presser or a Chris Ballard quote, and I just want you to react to it. You could react to it from the standpoint of someone who covers the Texans in division. You could react to it as someone who just covers the NFL in general, or as somebody who just loves football. However you want to react, but there's just too many good nuggets here. So let's start here. Which quote is more ridiculous? Jim Irsay comparing Jeff Saturday to Don Shula, the winningest coach in NFL history. The quote is, "There's a maturation curve. Shula was 32 years old. He had 3 nondescript years with the Lions before he took over the Ravens in 1963. Or Chris Ballard, the GM, comparing Chris Ballard to Michael Jordan. The quote, "The guy's a winner. He's immensely successful. No one's perfect. We all lose a lot in this league. You know how many shots Michael Jordan's missed? You know how many games Michael Jordan lost. What's more ridiculous? Jim Irsay comparing Jeff Saturday to Don Shula, or comparing Chris Ballard, his GM, to Michael Jordan?"
So you're basically asking, is Jeff comparing one guy to the one arguably the second greatest coach of all time, or comparing a GM that's never won a division title to arguably the greatest basketball player of all time that has 6 championships? I probably would lean towards calling Chris Ballard Michael Jordan. Granted, like Jeff Saturday, that's even crazy too. But Chris Ballard's never won anything. Like, we've never won a division. Compare him to a guy that's won 6 titles. It's absolutely lunacy. You know what I'm saying? Like the Colts roster is horrendous. You know what I'm saying? Jordan never had a horrendous season. You know what I'm saying? Chris Ballard's roster looks dreadful. So, I mean, they're both ridiculous. Don't get it wrong. But I would for sure say, I've been on the train of Chris Ballard. Got to put Chris Ballard on fraud watch because like people are putting in this air of being like one of the best GMs in the league, and his team never ever won a division. You know, so
I agree. His drafts were good early, but they've fallen off. There's no question about it. Okay, so you heard it from DJ. Jeff Saturday is the next Don Shula. Okay, moving on. Jim Irsay, the owner, is another quote from him. This is about how he's happy Jeff Saturday has no NFL experience, and as we know, no college coaching experience. I'm glad he doesn't have any NFL experience. I'm glad he hasn't learned the fear that's in this league because it's tough for all our coaches. They're afraid. They go to analytics and it gets difficult. He doesn't have all that. He doesn't have that fear. Your reaction to that comment?
I just find like the discussion of analytics so perplexing because like almost everything counts as analytics. Like if you study film, that's part of analytics because you're studying your team's tendencies to figure out what plays to call based off of what they do in these situations. That is analytics. So if Jim Irsay thinks that Jeff Saturday is just going to walk in and just say, this is what we're going to do. We're not going to watch film, yada, yada, yada. Like, we're just going to go out there. We're going to play our game. Like that's lunacy. Like, you know, like everything is lit. I remember talking to a coach, my offensive coordinator, asking him, like, how do you dial up plays versus a defense? Like, how does that even work? And like, he was like, I have these 5 plays. I have 5 plays for each situation based off of the down and distance, based off of what the defensive coordinator does week in and week out. So that is analytics. Going for it on 4th down is not the only definition of analytics. That like, you know what I'm saying? Going for 2, that's not like, that's probably like a very small, minute proportion of analytics. So it is, he just sounds like a get off my lawn old guy. That's
I agree. No, that's a very intelligent point about analytics that you make. It's more than what people understand it is. And I heard Sheil Kapadia with The Ringer pointing out, too, that the Colts, as well as many other teams, have analytics staffers on their payroll. So if you're working in the analytics department for the Colts and you hear that, what the heck are you supposed to think?
Right.
You're taking a paycheck from Jim Irsay, hearing that one of his least favorite things about modern coaches is they listen to analytics. Like you said, misunderstanding what it is to begin with. And also maybe you got to watch out for your job next. All right, next quote's coming from Chris Ballard, the general manager. This is him talking to the media in Indianapolis about why the roster has failed recently. Y'all have been kicking the shit out of me for years for not drafting wideouts, and all of a sudden I look up and we're underperforming on the offensive line. Your reaction?
Yeah, because I guess in 2022, where weapons are at a premium, you know, just having a great offensive line is going to get you everything you need. I mean, like, you can't win in the NFL without receivers now. Like, look at Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers looks absolutely cooked without any weapons to throw the ball to. You know what I'm saying? Like, we've seen 3 quarterbacks year 3 making massive jump once they got like a legit number 1 type receiver. We got Stephon Diggs to Josh Allen. We got AJ Brown to Jalen Hurts, and we got Tyreek Hill to Tagovailoa all year 3 made massive jumps. And each quarterback in year 3, because they got that one guy. Granted, there's a lot of other things that factor into it, but once they got that dominant guy, they all ended up in MVP talks. Hurts is in MVP talks. Tua is in MVP talks. Josh Allen finished second in MVP talks in year 2. So if you think that, you know, just having a good offensive line is going to be the secret sauce to everything, nah. Because we just saw the Bengals go to the Super Bowl without a good offensive line. And what was the key ingredient? Jamar Chase coming to town. So
yeah, that's a great point. I was looking at, I was talking to somebody the other day about how amazing it was or interesting it was during that draft process. You look at Jalen Waddle now and how great he is and how fast he is, and everybody knew coming in. But even with how good Waddle was, Chase was that much more separated from him and Devontae Smith in that class by any really evaluator you talk to. Yeah. And in hindsight, that's almost even more amazing and impressive to reflect on what kind of player he is, because you look at Waddle and Smith. I mean, these guys have come in and made immediate impact, but Chase is, and the kind of receiver you're talking about is that much more valuable.
Right, exactly. So if the Colts had another guy like that, maybe they're not in the position that they're in, you know?
That's right. And then here's another one from Jim Irsay. This is his comment on the Rooney Rule. I'm curious how you interpreted it.
Mm-hmm.
He says, yes, it's an interim head coaching job. It lines up with the Rooney Rule because you don't have to follow it with an interim hire. At the end of the season, there will be a full process of reviewing permanent head coach when we will have an interview process to go from there. Then he says, this is for 8 games, hopefully more. What do you think of those contrasting statements there? One, that we're going to follow the Rooney Rule, and the other, that he hopes Saturday's the coach for more than 8 games.
So in regards to the Rooney Rule, obviously black coaches getting opportunities in the NFL have always been an issue throughout the history of the entire league. I think that interim head coach rules isn't what black coaches were really fighting for, because they get those opportunities and it doesn't really amount to anything. And most times when a coach becomes an interim head coach, there's a great chance they're not going to get that job, because outside of Jeff Saturday, this is like a very unique situation. You bring somebody in random. Most guys were on the staff that led to the coach getting fired, right? So like they also may have played a part in not doing their job to the best of their ability to get that job. So that's why most times they don't even get the job either, right? We've seen Todd Bowles was the interim coach with the Miami Dolphins in 2010, or it was 2011, and they actually finished that season out better than some would have hoped. I think they finished like 6-10 after starting like 0 and something, and he didn't get the head coach job, and then it took him another 4 years.
Right,
to get an opportunity. We have Raheem Morris he was an interim head coach with the Atlanta Falcons, went to the Rams, even helped lead this team to the Super Bowl, still didn't get an opportunity to become a head coach. Even Dan Campbell, when he was with the Dolphins, they actually showed a lot of fight throughout that season, where I think he took over for Joe Philbin in 2015. He didn't get another head coaching job until this past year, and the job he got was with the Lions. So it's not like he walked into some glamour position. I think that with the Rooney Rule, I'm more focused on being able to get a full-time head coaching job, not an interim head coaching job, because most of those guys don't even get hired. The last guy I could think of that got hired after being an interim coach was Romeo Crennel. I forgot what year it was, but I know it was in 2010-ish range, and he was there, and he got fired after that year. I think they went like 2-14. That was like a really, really crazy year overall. But yeah, so
that's a good answer. Wait, do you do you not have an issue with Saturday even getting the interim job over Reggie Wayne on staff?
I have an issue with that, but in terms of like using it for the Rooney Rule and black coaches not getting opportunities, I don't really have an issue with that, because that's not what when Brian Flores filed his lawsuit, it wasn't for interim head coaching jobs. It was for full-time head coaching jobs, So that's kind of how I look at it, and that's kind of how I want to. Granted, the principality is messed up. Yeah, you just brought in a guy over. You could have had Reggie Wayne, but what about Gus Bradley, who's the head coach, or John Fox, who took 2 teams to the Super Bowl? So I think it goes both sides, right? There's white coaches that are probably upset, and there's black coaches that are upset, and whatever other minority coaches that are in that position to possibly get that opportunity that weren't able to get the opportunity. But going back to like black coaches, for me, it was always about head coaching jobs, because the interim job, you're probably not going to get the head coaching job to begin with anyway. So that's kind of my take on it.
No, it's a good point. And obviously the organization you cover just went through this with the Rooney Rule, trying to hire Josh McCown, but then ending up hiring Lovie Smith. So that has to be something that you've been covering and keeping a close eye on, especially being down in Houston, I would think.
Absolutely. It was a very wacky situation. I also heard that, the Eagles DC was also a very strong candidate. I think it was between
Jonathan
those two.
Gannon.
Yeah, and they, once the Flores situation popped off, they had to renege on both of that and had to just go with Lovie. So it is fair to wonder, like, how long term is Lovie? It is a fair question. We'll see. But yeah, I don't think that they could fire a black coach in back-to-back years, because just the PR hit would just be nasty. You would be getting CNN coming in, MSNBC, Fox News, everybody would be coming in, Washington Post, New York Times. So
you answered a question I was going to ask, and that actually leads me then into one of my major questions. So, of course, everybody knows right now the Texans are struggling. They're rebuilding. They are 1-6-1, but they don't just have a bad record. As we look forward, they own at the moment, if the season ended right now, the number 1 overall pick in next year's draft.
Right.
So, DJ, before we get into talking about the Giants' Sunday opponent and breaking down what's looking on the roster, you lead me to this. Nick Caserio as the GM, and then it sounds like you're saying, in your opinion, most likely Lovie Smith would be the head coach. How do you envision at this moment Caserio, Lovie, and the Texans using that pick?
Probably trying to address the quarterback position, not because like they don't believe that Davis Mills can be an effective quarterback in the NFL. I just think that it's hard. Like how often does a 3rd round pick end up becoming the guy of the future? Like the only one I can think about in recent memory is Russell Wilson, right?
Wilson,
you have your 4th round quarterbacks in Dak and Kirk Cousins, but those are a dime a dozen. Like that doesn't happen often, right?
Correct.
So,
Jalen Hurts is second, but still that's not a third.
Carr second, but most times if you go with that guy that wasn't in the 1st round, they have to show tremendous upside. Where it's like, oh no, we can roll with that long term. And Davis has shown capable ability, but he hasn't shown like franchise altering ability that maybe a guy like Bryce Young could, or a guy like CJ Stroud or Will Levis, or if Anthony Richardson comes out could, because I don't want to say they're a quarterback away, but there are multiple games that if they had a difference maker at quarterback, they would have won. The Bears game is one, the Colts game is another one, and I don't want to say the Raiders because the defense gave up 31 points, but it's another game that I forget. Oh, the Titans game also. Because even though they got dominated on the ground, they gave 314 yards rushing, and that'll lead us into our Saquon Barkley talk later. If you have on your fantasy team, draft him, start him immediately. They only had 17 points. Like the Titans only had 17 points throughout the entire game. And easily, if you had a quarterback that could make plays for you, you could have possibly won that game because Malik Willis, that was his first start. They weren't even letting him throw the ball. So, yeah, I think that there's a few games this year where it's like we had like that guy at quarterback. We could have possibly been able to be in a different situation,
Do you have a beat on which quarterback they would prefer? Or even if you don't know whether it's Stroud or Levis or Young or, Richardson yet, do you have a beat on the type of skill set quarterback that maybe Caserio would like that leads you to a potential guess at this moment? Or are you leaning a certain way?
If I had to go with an educated guess, I probably would say Bryce, because Bryce does a lot of like the quarterback things well, right? Like he might not have the big size and the massive arm or the athletic ability that Kyler Murray has, but like in terms of how he moves in the pocket with his pocket presence, how he throws with anticipation, how his pinpoint accuracy. Because like the difference between him, Tua, and Mac Jones, Tua and Mac Jones had like a bunch of NFL receivers around them. It's very clear Bryce does not have that, and he's still able to produce at a very high level. So that's why I think that he's easily the best quarterback in the class. Now, we'll see as time progresses. Because how many times has this guy the best quarterback in the class, and then a few years later, we look back and it's not even close. Baker and Sam Darnold went before Josh Allen and Lamar, and now we all see that should have never been the case, right? Like Burrow went first, and he still should have, you can make the argument he should have went first, but it's clear that Justin Herbert has proven to this point that he is the best quarterback in that class, even though it looks like right now there's 4 really good quarterbacks in that class. So, like, we'll obviously let it all play out, but with the 2023 class coming up, Bryce does look like the guy that could thrive in a kind of not perfectly ideal situation, even though, in my opinion, the Texans are like maybe like a piece or 2 away, right? They just need another tight end, better interior.
You think they're that close?
Yeah, and a better interior play, and then probably like another weapon on the outside. And I think they could be I think they could be an efficient offense. Right now they're a bottom tier offense in terms of points. I think they could be more in like that middle of the pack because I see what Pep is trying to do offensively. They already have a good running game. They can run the ball. They have 2 really good tackles. They probably have probably a top 3 tackle tandem in the NFL with Tunsil's playing like a top 2 left tackle level, and then obviously you have Titus Howard who's playing like a top 10 right tackle level. Like they don't really give up pressures or sacks to Davis. yeah, obviously sometimes, sacks happen, but like they played extremely well this year. Interior, they can get better. Obviously, they need another tight end. They don't really have, a legitimate tight end. But again, like they're not that far off offensively, in my opinion.
Wow.
Defensively, they have a little more holes in terms of stopping the run. But yeah, like when I watch the Texans, like obviously I covered the Jets last year, and obviously I looked at some Giant games last year. The Texans don't remind me of either one in terms of just being like terrible, right? Like there were games where we walked into, you and me, each Sunday, we knew we could write our game story by halftime, right?
No doubt.
The Texans have been in every single game leading up into the fourth quarter, outside of every single game actually. Even like against the Eagles Thursday night, it was 21-17 going into the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like that was
they gave them a game. Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to give you a game. It's just like in that fourth quarter, they can't figure out get over that hump, because in the fourth quarter, from coaches that I've talked to, players, at that point it just comes down to do we have better dudes than you? Like schematics kind of go out the window at that point, because at the end of the day it's mano a mano. Is my guy better than your guy?
Wow, yeah, no. So this is proof here that you can't just look at a team's record to understand what's going on. Because as DJ, you are telling us right now a lot more to like about the Texans roster than just looking at them only with one win in 8 games.
Right.
Particular to what I love about their roster, I wanted to get your insight on their rookie class right now, because I look at Derek Stingley Jr., Jalen Petrie, the safety, and I look at obviously Dameon Pierce, and I look at these 3 players, and I think I see a foundation for a Texans team that could really be good fast next year. What about all 3 of these guys is standing out to you, and where are they all in their development and the curve there?
So Dameon Pierce right now is 6th in the NFL rushing. So right now he's playing like a top 10 back. And like the offense is basically Dameon Pierce or bust, right? It's like, all right, it's kind of similar to like the Giants with Saquon Barkley, where it's like, all right, we kind of go as far as our running back takes us. And Dameon Pierce has great vision. Obviously, he's fast, great balance, has good quickness, knows how to really set up his blocks. Because again, like the Texans don't really get creative with their run game. Like it's basically, all right, this is what we're going to do. Stop us. And as long as their guys cannot get bullied like they did against the Titans, for the most part, Damon's going to be able to make something happen, right? Because, again, like he just ran for $139 on one of the best defenses in the league. And then, obviously, he's had really big performances. Now, Jalen Petrie is basically a playmaker. Like he's going to be around the ball. He has 2 interceptions, has a couple TFLs, has a sack, has a couple PBUs. Like, Petrie is a playmaker. And then you go to Derek Stingley. He might not be getting the hype that Sauce may be getting. Granted, Sauce deserves all his hype. Sauce has had a better rookie year. Obviously, Tariq Woolen from the Seahawks has also had a better year. But those guys are also playing on better defenses that make their jobs easier, right? Derek Stingley has, from what I've seen, he's been worthy of that number 3 overall pick. And on top of that, in my opinion, I don't want to, like, Levy doesn't utilize him fully to his strengths. Like, it's clear as day, Saleh uses and Pete utilize Sauce and Tyreek to their absolute strengths, because both of them, we've seen throughout history, they know how to develop cornerbacks, right? Pete has developed a bunch of cornerbacks. Saleh, same thing, right? Because their scheme accentuates cornerbacks, because they make their job really easy. It's basically, we have a few things that we want you to do, master those things, and go play football. So Lovey kind of has his corners do a lot, right? Sometimes they have to run a lot of cover 2. Sometimes they got to run a lot of cover 3. Sometimes they got to run quarters. They don't run man that often. And on top of that, like, they always have to have their eyes on the quarterback. Like, even when they're in man, like, they still have to have their eyes on the quarterback and then kind of react to whatever the receiver is doing. And he's still being able to do that at an impressive level. Obviously, I won't say high level. Like, he hasn't been like one of the best corners in the league. I won't go that far. But you can see the talent, right? I would hope that, Lovey could, like, alter his scheme a little bit to, like, trust your cornerbacks to kind of sometimes play on an island, right? Because Sometimes it just cover 2, and that's that. Because like third down, third and 3 and longer, the Texans go like cover 2 on, I want to say like 48% of the drops. So like what's coming. Yeah. It's like the second highest is the Bills at 34%. So like like it's pretty obvious what they're doing on third downs. You know what I'm saying? Third downs is when cornerbacks can really make their money. That's the money down. You know what I'm saying? But
if they make predictable play calls, listen, this Giants team isn't as good as their record from a talent standpoint, but they do have good coaches.
Yeah.
If the Texans have predictable play calling, that's a recipe to lose a game against this coaching staff for sure.
Agreed. You know, like, and I will give Lovie his credit. Like he'll switch it up in the second half if you see he's not working. But sometimes you kind of got to beat the team to the punch, right? How many times in that Eagles game you just saw wide open dudes? A lot of it was just guys getting schemed open, especially in that first half, because they knew exactly what the Texans were going to be in, and they just called plays off of that. So
something to watch for. You brought it up earlier, so I want to get to it. But I'm very excited to see all those young Texans play in person, first of all. But as you said, even with some of the promise on both sides of the ball, including the defense, they do not stop the run. Before the Giants played the Seahawks, they had a stretch coming up. Seahawks, Texans, Lions, of the 3 worst NFL run defenses in the league at that point. At that moment, I predicted Saquon Barkley was going to shatter the Giants' rushing record in one of those 3 games. It's 234 yards by Tiki Barber. So, DJ, will it happen on Sunday against the Texans? Can Saquon Barkley rush for more than 234 yards against this defense?
Nah, because Derrick Henry did it. If Derrick Henry did it with Malik Willis at quarterback, then I don't think Saquon will get to 234. Because like against with the Titans, it was basically like, we're gonna run the ball, stop us. They couldn't. They just kept running the ball. You know. Oof. So I mean, he got like 32 carries for like the 219. It's the most a player has had. You know, single player has had this year. That their run defense is so bad that like if you Google the top 2 rushing performances for a team in 2022, the Texans pop up, and then for both of them.
So 219 for Henry? Okay.
Yeah, so like the Titans overall in that game, 314, and then the number 2 team was the Bears with 284. And then the single player is Derrick Henry with 219. So he's the only guy to go over 200 this year, having to be against the Texans. So
oh man, going to be some fireworks at MetLife Stadium. It'll be good to have you back. A couple other Texans questions. Brandon Cooks, where does that stand? I know he seemed like upset for good reason. I would say that he wasn't traded. Seems like he thought he was going to be, or felt like there was some arrangement that he was going to be. So is he going to play in this game? Is he still a part of the team? What's going on there with him? Because I know he sat out last week.
Yeah. He's gonna be. He'll be back with the team. He should play this week. He's back in the building. One thing about Brandon, he's gonna be professional regardless. Like he's gonna go. He's gonna do his job. That's one thing that I'll give him credit for. He probably won't talk about the trade stuff anymore since it's in the past. But we knew that he wasn't happy because even when we tried to ask him about it after the Titans game, he said he wanted to keep everything internal. And obviously, he was liking tweets left and right about getting traded. And then, you know, he tweeted out what he tweeted out after he wasn't traded. But I think, you know, he'll still be a professional about it. I think he just wanted to go to a contender because the team that, you know, he tweets he was liking was a team like the Vikings or like the Cowboys or the Rams, things like that. But it was just really his contract. Because if you got to be honest, he didn't do himself any favors by signing that extension. I mean, I get it. Like, you getting $18 million guaranteed. Like, it's hard to tell anybody to pass that up. But when you took that deal, you knew that was always a possibility because you did just come off a 4-13 season, right? So, like, good point. There was always that possibility that you guys could not be good in 2022. So, but I think he's going to regardless be a professional. So I do expect to see him this week against the Giants.
Good to hear. Another talented player to watch on Sunday. A receiver who's not on the field, but a special talent, John Mechie, the rookie receiver, obviously diagnosed with leukemia in the offseason. Where does his recovery or outlook stand?
Yeah, from everybody I've talked to, it seems like it's on track. It's going really well. Sometimes we're in the locker room, he'll walk through. So he's around the facility. Like he's still active. He still, you know, goes and gets treatment at his hospital too throughout the weeks. But yeah, he's for sure still around. He's on track to make a full recovery and be back with the Texans in 2023.
Wow, that's great to hear. And as far as you're concerned, I mean, I have to ask you this. I see you got this spacious apartment, barely cost you a dime. Everything's going well. You're with ESPN, you're big time, but the Jets are rolling. The Jets are good. The Jets look like they might make the playoffs. DJ, are you jealous? Are you jealous now that this is happening and that you're not along for the ride in New York with Gang Green at the moment and Robert Saleh and the crew?
Nah, I'm not jealous. Not jealous at all. I still feel like at times I'm part of the ride, so I ain't too jealous. I just got to fix another. I helped fix that franchise. Now I'm trying to fix this franchise in Houston. You know what I'm saying? So, it is funny though that throughout the draft process and offseason, I kept saying like they need to get some cornerbacks so their defense can be fully unlocked. And I got a lot of pushback. And now they got those two corners, DJ Reed and Sauce, and now their defense is unlocked. Now it's a top 5 unit in the NFL, right? So now they're really good team, man. They have talent like all over. I remember watching the Green Bay game, and they're just really like just beating Green Bay down in the trenches on the perimeter. Like that game, it was like 27, 12, 17, whatever the score was, but it wasn't that close. It felt like more like a 31-7 affair, to be honest, because like they just really dominated them in the trenches. But it's good to see them doing well. My Dolphins are also doing well. Let's throw that out there. Arguably got the best quarterback in the division, but that's neither here nor there.
Oh, the Dolphins, yeah, right. You slip in a Tuanon support right there. So wait, I got to put you on the spot for the Jets because, as you said, you predicted correctly. Get some corners, team would get unlocked, defense would unlock. You and I both know the Giants were going to take Sauce Gardner if the Jets didn't. Right. They still take Kayvon Thibodeau, a talented player, but he was a coveted player in the New York area of both teams. But now putting you on the spot here, I think I ask people this. Anybody who's on this podcast, I ask every week because I'm convinced it's going in a certain direction, but I need your opinion. Will Zach Wilson be the Jets' starting quarterback for the rest of the season? That's one.
Oh, yeah.
And two is, will he be their starting quarterback in week 1 of next season?
In 2023?
Yes.
Yeah, man. It depends, man. Okay, so I'll say this. He has to significantly improve by the end of the year, right? Like right now he's on pace to throw for I think 11 touchdowns or something like that. Like 11 or 12 touchdowns.
He's not a major part of these games, yeah.
Then he won't be the starter. Because the team, you can see it with your eyes. The team is ready to. I said the team had above average quarterback play. They could contend for the division, possibly win the division. And we saw when Zach was average, which he was on Sunday, they beat the Bills because their defense is so good. So if they get above average quarterback play or even good quarterback play, that team could possibly win the AFC because that defense is so loaded and there's so many pieces at running back, receiver, the O-line is good, the scheme is good on both sides. Like that team is ready to run. So if he does not improve drastically, no, there's no way. There's no way. There's no way because how good this team can be. The coaches aren't stupid. They know that. You know what I'm saying? They know how good the team can be. They know how close they are. So yeah. As he doesn't improve dramatically, they'll for sure be looking. But if he does improve, like I said, he can get to closer to, I don't know, it's crazy. Can he get to 20 touchdowns?
I agree with you though that this is where I'm coming from with that question. I agree with you. This coaching staff knows what they're watching. They know what they're looking at, and you can always see when a team is scheming a game where they're trying to protect the quarterback from themselves rather than unleashing them and making them a huge part of the plan. I mean, he was certainly better against the Bills, getting the ball out quickly and all of that. But I don't look at this. Yeah, it's a great season that looks like it's going on the right track, but if the Jets make the playoffs, even if Wilson's a slight part of it, if there's any indication he's holding them back, he's not going to be their starter next year. That's my take. But
I agree. I mean, we've seen teams do that all the time now. Recently, if we feel like you were holding us back, we will move off of you. We saw the Niners try to move off of Jimmy G. We saw the Rams move off of Jared Goff after he helped get into a Super Bowl. We saw, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Like Baker helped get the Browns to the Super Bowl, not Super Bowl, to the divisional round against the Chiefs. And I remember talking to a guy that was on that in that front office, and he was like, "We knew once we got to the divisional round and we lost to the Chiefs, that was as far as Baker was ever going to take us." And at that point, they knew, like, they had to figure out how to, plan for the future, which they ended up doing, and moving on and get another quarterback. Now, how they did that was kind of janky, but they knew that, Baker wasn't
your point.
So teams aren't dumb, man. Like, teams aren't dumb, and like there's teams are not dumb. I'll say that.
Yeah, no, great analogy, great insight, and we'll have to have you back to talk your Dolphins and more teams around the league. You always bring great insight, DJ. We miss you here. It'll be great to have you back. Everybody, please go follow DJ if you don't already. I'm sure you do on Twitter, Instagram. Look for some special, interesting, in-depth stories he is working on for ESPN, and follow him everywhere. DJ Bien-Amie, thanks again for joining me, man.
No problem. Thank you for having me. Thank you for around. I mean, we were supposed to have this podcast when I was at the Daily News, when the season started, but things happen.
Hey man, tried to get it going. Glad to be on the Believe Network now, getting it rocking, doing the whole league too. So we still got to keep that Giants flavor, right? Because I'm in and around the team. But my favorite part of this is going around the league and really being able to expand and talk about all these teams. So you're really helping me do that. And we're going to have you back. Maybe not for the playoffs because the Texans will be out, but hey, listen, I'll tell you this. If the Dolphins go deep, you're going to come on. We'll do a full Dolphins episode. How about that?
Absolutely. I'll probably be in a Tua jersey.
That's acceptable. Thanks again, man. Talk to you soon.
No problem.
All right. Welcome back to Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard. Let's get over to Pat's picks for Week 10 in the NFL. Posted a 7-5-1 record in Week 9. Back over 500. 68, 66, and 2 for the season, and won my best bet, the Cardinals as underdogs in Arizona. Let's start with one of my favorite bets of Week 10. Dallas Cowboys coming off a bye week, -5 at the Green Bay Packers. Mike McCarthy returns to Green Bay. Dallas has won 6 of its last 7, and their last 4 wins have not been close over Washington, the Rams, Lions, and Bears. Only losses to the Bears and Eagles. A fast defense combined with a strong running game. I saw Green Bay play in person this season, and I've seen them struggle consistently, including against the Detroit Lions offensively. So it's not going to go well for Aaron Rodgers and company against Dallas. That might end up being my best bet of the week. Obviously, check all of my full picks on Instagram on Friday at PL on NFL. Let's go over to the Raiders, -6 against the Colts at home. The Colts being coached by Jeff Saturday after the firing of Frank Reich. I'm taking the Raiders on this one, despite their coming off of a horrendous loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars, surrendering a 17-point lead. The Colts in their last game against the Patriots, the game that got Frank Reich fired, 60 plays on offense for 121 yards, 2.0 yards per play exactly, and 3 points. Fledgling offensive coordinator joins up, and Jeff Saturday, who has never coached at the college or NFL level, in his first game. I love the Raiders despite all the struggles they have had. The Chiefs -9.5 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jags coming off a really good comeback win against Las Vegas, but the Chiefs are one of the classes of the entire league. They've won 4 of their last 5. And their only loss in that stretch was to the Buffalo Bills. The 9.5 is a big number for me here, but because Kansas City is at home and I don't want to overreact to Jacksonville's win against a bad team in the Raiders that doesn't know how to close it out. So I like Mahomes and the Chiefs to cover here fairly easily. Seattle Seahawks +2.5 against the Buccaneers in Germany. It will be an exciting game to watch. I hesitate to take Seattle only because of the geographical time difference coming from the Pacific Northwest all the way across the U.S., the Atlantic Ocean, and over to Germany on this long trip. Obviously, that could play a factor. However, the Seahawks have won 4 of their last 5 of their last 6, I should say, and 4 straight, covering that spread in all of those games, that 2.5 points. Geno Smith playing like an MVP candidate, and Kenneth Walker, the rookie running back, has been a stud. Go to the Texans, plus 6.5 at the Giants. I like Houston on this line. This could be a look but don't touch. The Giants and Saquon Barkley will run the ball very effectively in this game, as we saw with Derrick Henry and what the Titans did against Houston. Houston is 1-6-1. That said, the Texans were only trailing the Eagles when they played Philadelphia a couple weeks ago by 4 points, 21-17, going into the fourth quarter. The Eagles end up winning that game by 12, 29-17. But I do think Houston has what it takes to score a couple touchdowns in this game, especially with the Giants down Xavier McKinney. And so 6.5 points, that's a lot of points for a Giants team, even at 6-2, to cover, given what their offensive game plan is. There's a good chance that Houston gives up a lot of yards, but not, let's say, 25 points in this game. So I like Houston to cover. But again, take some caution, monitor the injury. Xavier McKinney, again, a big loss for the Giants defense. Titans -3 against the Broncos. Denver has lost 4 of its last 5, and in 6 of its 8 games has scored 16 or fewer points. I like Tennessee here, covering at home, especially because Ryan Tannehill, we don't know yet exactly where he stands at quarterback, but if Tannehill is healthy or able to play, I especially like Tennessee. Monitor the quarterback situation there. If it's Malik Willis and not Ryan Tannehill, I would not touch it. But if Tannehill is playing, or if you start getting an eye on the fact that Tannehill is going to re-enter the lineup after missing the last 2, I would get some quick money down there. And then finally, the 49ers -7 against the Chargers at home in San Francisco. That is a huge line for a Chargers team that has won 4 of its last 5. I would say if Deebo Samuel plays here, though, I love the Niners here. I think Christian McCaffrey is going to have his way with the Chargers. I don't believe the Chargers are as good as their record or those 4 wins in their last 5 should show. I thought the Atlanta Falcons should have beaten them last week in Atlanta, and the Chargers got away with one. The Niners are going to hit their stride here. As they get healthier, they will reemerge as one of the class teams in the NFC and in the entire league. So I like the Niners covering there. All those lines courtesy of Bet Online AG. Go over there for all your gaming needs. Again, my full picks will be posted on Instagram on Friday at PL on NFL. Please like, subscribe, review this podcast wherever you are listening or watching on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, etc. All the support is much appreciated. We love coming back here and talking ball every week, and we will see you next time with another special guest.